habit, I will report this bill with amendment presently. We now come to the Education Amendment Bill number 2. When we were last considering this bill, we were debating part 1. Grant Robertson had the call, and he has 3 minutes and 5 seconds remaining if he so wishes. P.S. he does not.
Mr Chair.
Chris Hipkins.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. I'm very happy to take a call on the Education Amendment Bill number 2 in these committee stages on part 1, and I want to turn particularly to the to the submissions on clause 38 of the bill, particularly new section 38211, and that particularly relates to the new functions of the Education Council of Aotearoa New Zealand in carrying out audits of teacher registrations on an annual basis. It requires them to audit 10% of all of the practising certificates issued in a given year, in any given year. Now, roughly, it's a 3-year cycle, so roughly a third of the teaching profession will renew their practising certificates each year. That means that 10% of that third will go through an audit process. And we received through the Select Committee quite a range of submissions about this. Overwhelmingly, submitters felt that this was overly heavy-handed. And first of all, I want to acknowledge I understand what the government are trying to achieve here. They're basically looking at some comments that have been made, particularly by ERO and others. Judith Aitken, for example, a former Chief Review Officer of ERO and a member of the Review Committee, noticed that there's huge national inconsistency and some weaknesses in teacher appraisal processes. And this has come through in a lot of research that's been done around New Zealand, and that's very legitimate. And so I think what the government are trying to standardise here is a greater performance appraisal system or feedback and appraisal system for the teaching profession. But the real challenge is to make if you like, best practice, common practice, without making it standard practice. Because if you make it standard practice, or if the government makes it standard practice, then it would actually no longer be best practice, because it will turn into a form-filling exercise where teachers basically spend a lot of their time assembling portfolios which are based on compliance rather than based on good educational outcomes. So what we want to do is encourage every school in the country to be adopting best practice systems when it comes to the appraisal of their teaching staff without turning it into a compliance exercise. And the real risk of this 10% audit function is that it'll actually undermine the purpose of the bill, which is to raise the status of teaching and raise the quality of teaching in classrooms. And I want to point out here too, this is paper-based. So this is a group of people potentially sitting in Wellington looking at the portfolio of paper that's been presented to them. This will not result in one additional person sitting in a teacher's classroom and saying, these are the things you're doing well and these are the things that you could improve on. So it's not actually going to result in a tangible increase in teaching practice. And that should be our goal. If the goal is to raise student achievement, then tangible increases in teaching practice is what an appraisal system should be all about. A paper-based review in Wellington, based on a form-filling exercise, which is what this could well become, isn't going to achieve that. And so we've had some very compelling submissions from the profession itself and from many others saying that what's intended here isn't going to work. What we're talking about here, we're talking about potentially auditing 10,000 teacher appraisals. How can that be done through a central administration by the Education Council of Aotearoa New Zealand in a quality and a meaningful way? It would be an enormous administrative exercise, and someone is going to have to pay for that. Who's going to pay? Ultimately, the teachers themselves will pay, because it'll be their registration fees that cover that cost. Is that the job of the registration? No, it's not. This is actually the function of their employer. The employer making sure they get quality appraisal should be covering the cost of that, not teachers in the form of the cost of their practising certificates. So I think while I understand the objective behind this particular clause, I understand why the government are trying to raise the standard of teacher appraisal throughout the country. I think that the mechanism they're using to try and do that is very, very flawed. And I want to reflect here some of the comments from some of the teachers who submitted to the Select Committee, where they were very concerned that the evidence that they'd have to produce in order for to renew their practicing certificates, in order to justify the renewal of their practicing certificates, to meet this 10% audit requirement, would actually divert them away from their teaching job, which of course is what they're there to do and what they're passionate about. So best practice teacher appraisal is actually based on in-classroom observation, which is best done within the school rather than by Mr. Chair.
Tracy Martin.
Mr. Chair. Can I just pick up around